We're just going to create a basic cloner here just to figure out what this MoGraph thing is all about and how we can start to use it. So under my MoGraph menu up the top here, I'm just going to create a cloner. So the cloner doesn't do anything on its own. It's a tool that will duplicate another object. So I need an object to go in my cloner to actually see what's going on here. So let's just create a sphere, for example. So object sphere. So there's a normal sphere. And I can just drag and drop this into the cloner, so it's a child of the cloner. And then what we see is we get 3 spheres. So this is the default setting for a cloner. What it does is it duplicates that shape, so there's 3 of them, and it stacks them one on top of the other in the vertical y-axis. So what we can do is have a quick look at our cloner and actually see how this thing works. So make sure you've got your cloner selected, just click on it. And we can look at its attributes down the bottom here. And we're looking mostly at this object tab to start with. So at the moment this is what we call a linear cloner. So it clones objects in a line. We've got a count. If I just zoom out a little bit here, we can turn the count up and we get more of these objects. The other thing that's kind of important here is having a look at these X, Y, and Z position, rotation, and scale values. At the moment, it's cloning this object and it's moving it 50 centimeters up in the y-axis. So if we change any of these values here, we can see that it's cloning in the various axes. We can also scale along the different axes, so it's scaling these clones. And you can see it's a progressive scaling. So the first one is not scaled, the second one is scaled by this amount, the third one scaled again, so we get this sort of graduated effect. So straight away we can see we can build some quite interesting patterns here using a cloner. And that's sort of the basic elements of cloning stuff. You get a shape, put it into a cloner, figure out how many copies you want, and if you want them moved or scaled in a certain direction. Obviously I can rotate as well, but this is a sphere, so I'm not going to see too much difference in this when I rotate. Actually I am, because I've got these scaled, so you can see that there's this graduated rotation going on as well. Maybe I'll move those a bit further apart so I can see that. So we can make really interesting shapes and patterns using this cloner. And the interesting thing is this cloner, it's creating this multiple copies with all these different translations on it. It's doing that to whatever shape is in there. So if I was to delete the sphere and create a cube and put the cube in there, now it gets those scalings and rotations and all the settings from the MoGraph object that I had applied before. The other thing you can do is you can put cloners inside cloners. So for example, if I've made this pattern here and maybe it's some kind of staircase in an abstract world and I want a bunch of them, I can create another cloner and I can put this cloner into that cloner. And I can say with this cloner, let's have a bunch of them stacked up in Y space and maybe rotated around, and maybe I can start to make some weird spiral staircase thing if I put a few more of them in. So we can get quite complex shapes quite quickly. So what I've got here is a bunch of clones of a box, and then that whole system is cloned again. So it's a hierarchical, non-destructive process, and it's really powerful, and it's a really great tool that we can do all sorts of modeling things with, as well as actual motion graphics.